Hello, Teacup ladies. Welcome to Tea Time with Teacup Entrepreneurs. I'm Steph Pellish, your hostess here at Tea Time, and I am so excited for our first returning interviewee, Leah Andreoni, who is a therapist who specializes working with women, and she's going to tell us all about that in just a moment. She owns a therapy practice in Harleysville, Pennsylvania called Rising Sun Therapy, and I am so excited to welcome her and to be sharing this conversation with all of you. And so, hi, Leah. Welcome back.
Thank you, Steph. I didn't know I was the first returning, so that is exciting.
You are. I meant to tell you that before we started, but yeah, very exciting. And so I'm just going to give an opportunity real quick for anybody who doesn't know you, if you can just kind of share a little bit about what you do in your therapy practice, who you are, and what kind of clients you work with. So we have some foundation for our conversation today.
Sure. So, owning Rising Sun Therapy allows me to work with women, specifically moms. So, I like to say that I see the new mamas up into the grandmamas. So, everyone in family planning stage, going through pregnancy, acute postpartum, and then everything up until midlife and beyond. And with that, I also have other therapists that work with me with Rising Sun. So we see teens all the way up to, again, the grandmoms and everything in between. We also have Rising Wellness, which is the wellness piece of Rising Sun Therapy. So we're able to offer workshops and groups that complement the talk therapy, along with music therapy, art therapy, movement, so we can be creative and connect, as connection is the foundation of Rising Sun Therapy and Rising Wellness.
Love all of that. And
Mhm.
so we have talked a lot about therapy and women. One of my passions is supporting women. And, one of the
Mhm.
big key components in my life was when I started my own therapy journey. And so I would just love to kind of hear. I know I had such a stigma for therapy, and a lot of that has really decreased, especially since COVID. I think a lot more people are talking about it, are normalizing it. But I would love if you can share a little bit about what brings you're working with generally moms in all stages. And so,
Mhm.
what's bringing those moms into therapy?
Sure. Mostly it's when they have anxiety and depression that they feel like they're not able to function anymore. Unless they've been in therapy previously, then they understand, that this might be a time where I want to get back into therapy. I haven't been in a while. I have some things coming up. I have changes, all the life changes, whether they're coming out of any type of schooling, they want to change careers, or even all the life changes of becoming a mom of teenagers, becoming, a mom and, an empty nester. All of the life changes can bring up all of the unresolved issues if you know you've had trauma or you don't know you've had trauma, and just knowing that it's bubbling up.
Yeah. And
And then you're coming to therapy, and then we can piece it out.
And so are these women, when they come to you, have they already been diagnosed with anxiety and depression? Has their doctor maybe identified it and referred you, or are they just kind of identifying it in themselves?
I would say all of the above.
Okay.
We definitely have a lot of where, especially the women going through perimenopause and menopause, we do work with those women, understanding the hormonal shifts do affect us physically and cognitively. But they are going to their doctors, and their doctors are saying, would you like to take this pill or do you want to see therapy? And we're seeing a lot more. They want to try the therapy first, which is
Yeah.
fabulous.
Yeah.
And then, if needed, maybe they'll get some support through medication, but they are willing to try to make some lifestyle changes, talk about how their past and their thoughts are affecting them now. So whether they're being referred to from family members, doctors, or themselves just knowing I can't do this by myself anymore. And
Yeah.
like you said, especially after COVID, where the big boom, I would say, of, decreasing the stigma, everybody, could benefit from therapy. Even just to have times where you're like, I just need to talk about this with someone. And maybe I don't want to continue to talk to my partner or continue to talk to my friends because I know what they'll say, but it's not really helping me move forward.
Yeah.
So having that outside person can be like, well, I never thought of that before. And that helps them make changes or look at things a different way.
Right. And there's also no emotional attachment to the conversation when you're working with a therapist too. Because when I speak with my husband, if I'm
Mhm.
feeling challenged by him or struggling with something that he's doing and I talk to him, there's now an emotional charge between us. Whereas if I talk it out with my therapist,
Mhm.
she has no emotional
Mhm.
say in it. She's there to hold space for me and to stay
Mhm.
neutral so that I can kind of process or work through it versus having to process and work through it with him while he's also processing and working through.
Mhm.
And
Right.
yeah, I know when I first started therapy, one of the things that my therapist had said to me was every woman deserves to talk about herself for an hour every week.
Mhm.
And that
Mhm.
concept for me was not something that one, had ever even considered, but
Mhm.
really, like culturally,
Mhm.
there was so much for me that no, it's not supposed to be about you. It's supposed to be about your children. It's supposed to be about all of these roles that I had. And so
Mhm.
that really gave me
Mhm.
permission to say, oh, I need this.
Yes. And for some of my women, I am the only space that they feel comfortable
Hmm.
with talking about things. There's many of my clients that are like, I've never told anyone this before. So I feel honored that they feel safe enough and can open up about that. But being able, especially as a mom, to take that hour a week or sometimes even a month for yourself,
Yeah.
they'll come in and I'll be like, just sit,
Yeah.
just grab the tea, grab the coffee, just
Take your
be.
time.
Take your time. Do you need to lay down? What do you need? Because it is a time where it's only about them. They're not used to it, right? Because you say culturally, we're not supposed to take time for ourselves. And those are the conversations I love with my clients
Yeah.
because we challenge what we've been told as women, as little girls, that we are supposed to take care of everyone else. And then our identity is just our children. And that's not true. But I get excited to challenge that with them and start to see them come out of that.
Yeah. And I think my oldest is 15. And so I also had this Pinterest mom idea
Mm.
where I was seeing, the Pinterest moms, everybody doing all of the things. And again, like I think that has really shifted to showing more of the reality behind things, but not completely.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have a visitor
Mhm.
here, so I'm just going to
Right.
for a second.
Bye.
Yeah, the imperfect part of parenting, of motherhood, right?
Mhm.
Where
Right.
two of my kids are downstairs, supposed to be keeping the 5-year-old downstairs.
Mhm.
And oh, she told us she's going upstairs to take a nap. She hasn't taken a nap in 2 years. Nobody's believing that she's going to lay down for a nap. But
Mhm.
anyway, yes,
Right.
right? Like I had this with my oldest, the Pinterest, and even though I wasn't aiming for that perfection, it still felt like pressure.
Mhm.
And even now,
Mhm.
there are still women who I see, and I'm like, for every holiday, it's over the top. I'm like,
Mhm.
I can't.
Mm-mm.
I don't want
No.
to.
Mm-mm.
And so there's a
No.
little bit less of that in some ways, but in others, it's still there. And so that pressure
Mhm.
to be that Pinterest mom Like, is that
Right.
something that you hear or that you see? Yeah.
100%. And I do encourage all my clients to either get off of social media for a little bit or at least take time every now and again to audit what they're following.
Hmm.
And I'll give them suggestions of very real moms that I follow because I don't want any of that pressure. I'll put enough of that pressure on myself. Um, so it's being able to only find the real moms, the ones that are crying on camera, the ones that show you the rest of their room as it's a disaster versus their very clean table, which is not real. Um, so it is really cultivating the information that you're taking in and knowing that that pressure is always going to be there because we can't change society with the snap of our fingers. But we can learn what we want to take in, what we allow to affect us, and how we want to show up for our kids, and knowing that we have to strive for good enough and not perfection, because we're always going to have the pressure to be perfect.
Yeah,
And if we strive to that, that's when we really, really get stuck.
and that was something that I really struggled with because I think I didn't see it as perfectionism. I saw it as I just wanted to do better than what I was doing in the moment. But really looking at it and really looking at some of like patterns from earlier in my life and things that happened earlier in my life, even just as recent as last week, I was like, oh, this is why I'm constantly trying to better myself or do better or set the bar higher, or I have such high expectations because I know that on my best day, when I feel the best, I can hit that.
Mm-hmm.
So why am I not hitting that on my every other day?
Right? Because that's how life goes. Good day, not so good day. Good day, not so good day. Right?
Right.
And it's accepting that that's how life is. And we have to take the lows with the highs. And that's where we're good enough. Are we consistent,
Yeah.
even with the highs and lows? Right?
Yeah.
Inconsistent is shooting up or down. But if we're fairly consistent, that's all our kids really need
Yeah.
is us being consistent.
Yes. And such a reminder that we all need as moms, as women, but as moms especially, that our kids need us to just be there. How,
Mm-hmm.
we're doing our best every day and
Mm-hmm.
believing that we're doing our best every day. And if you're watching this or listening to this, I guarantee that you are putting in your best effort and your kids
Mm-hmm.
are gaining everything from that because that's really
Mm-hmm.
what what they need and what they want, even when they're
Yes.
arguing with you that it's not what they want.
Yes. And I've told many, many, many moms that if you were questioning how well you're doing, it already makes you a good mom.
Yeah,
Bad moms don't want to do better. They're not questioning, am I being good enough for my kids?
yeah,
So just the fact that your thought is going in that direction makes you a good mom.
yeah.
You're already there.
Yeah, and you know, we talk about like this role of being a mom, and it's a new role for us. It's something that we've never done, and even with each kid, it's
Mhm.
a new
Oh,
experience.
yeah.
And each age, it's a new experience. And
Mm-hmm.
if you have multiple
Mm-hmm.
kids, like I do, I've got one well, I have two who are teenagers, an 11-year-old and then a 5-year-old. So it's like I feel like I'm never getting out of some of the stages, or I get out of one and come right back in. But every time it's
Yeah.
different. And every time
Mm-hmm.
to figure out how to not just do it, but how it feels good for me to show up. And so I'd
Mm-hmm.
love to hear your kind of take on this. Like, how do we how do we find ourselves inside of motherhood when it's constantly shifting?
Mm-hmm. Yes, constantly shifting. So it is taking that tiny pieces, tiny moments to be able to find yourself. So where it's really difficult is when the babies are infants or the first 2 years, 3 years, when they're extremely dependent and you feel like you have absolutely no time, no capacity. You might actually find that you have 2 minutes and you can actually do a lot in those 2 minutes to just be with yourself, whether it's just breathing when you're nursing or feeding your baby, just breathing,
Yeah.
right? If you are in therapy, taking that full hour to mostly talk about yourself,
Hmm.
right? Obviously, the kids and the partner and the friends and the family is going to come in, but really dive in on you and your feelings and your ideas, because then your therapist will be able to help you capitalize on that outside of session in other 2 minutes, 5 minutes, where you can, even if you're with the kids or you're nap trapped, you can read a book instead of scroll on your phone. You can pick up your pen and just doodle while you're even nap trapped with the child on you, which gets into your creativity, which is one way how you can find yourself.
Yeah.
And we're all creative in different ways, but it's tapping into that part of your brain that no one else has much influence over that.
Yeah.
That's you to the core,
Yeah.
right? Getting into that creativity, getting into that little star doodle that you put in the polka dots. That's yours.
Yeah.
And
Well,
when you can be creative, that's where you find yourself.
right. And that's something I think comes up a lot too with motherhood. We talk about losing ourselves. And so now you have to find yourself. And are we like, how do
Mhm.
we merge those, or how do we kind of do that?
Right. We have to come to accept that the person that you were before, or at least some parts before, are now forever changed.
Yeah.
As we change from the cellular level, our bodies, our blood, and our brain changes every time we have a baby, every single time. You've changed 4 times from the cellular level.
Hmm.
and and it's being able to grieve and mourn who you were before, your freedom, your relationship with your partner, your relationship with yourself, because it's done a complete 360. And when we say we have to find ourselves, we have to find out and get to know this new version of ourselves. We've
Yeah.
never been here before. Even if we have one, two, three children, we've never been a mom of two, three, four children before. So
Right.
it's being able to take those 2 minutes to be like, oh my gosh, once all the kids are in bed, then what? Hopefully you're sleeping. Hopefully you're sleeping. But there's also that bedtime revenge where moms are like, that's the only time that I get for myself.
Yeah. It's quiet. I can
No one
just
needs anything.
zone out. Nobody needs
Mm-hmm.
anything. I can just soak it
Yes.
all in. And then in
Yeah.
the
So it's,
morning, when
yeah.
I don't want to get up because I stayed up too long trying to soak it all in,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right. Right. Taking an extra 20 minutes, an extra 30 minutes into bedtime, hopefully not hours, but it's taking those times to doodle, to write, to read something, to listen to your music,
Yeah.
right? To stretch, to really find, what you enjoy. It doesn't have to take a long time. But if you can do that while you're trying not to go to bed, then you'll feel more fulfilled
Yeah.
and then hopefully relax and then get some sleep until somebody wakes you up.
Oh, yeah. 2:30
Mm-hmm.
this morning, I had someone in my bed looking for me
Mm-hmm.
to snuggle. And
Mm-hmm.
so, it's funny. I'm gonna transition a little bit here, but to business, being a business owner, a lot of people compare it to motherhood, and in some ways, there are a lot of comparison, and
Mm-hmm.
there's there's still that need, but I find business, while more, mm, don't know. They're both challenging. I feel like my kids challenge me more emotionally than my business, but
Hmm.
there are definitely some emotional ups and downs in being a business owner.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
curious with your own experience as a business
Hmm.
owner and as a mom, what kind of parallels you've seen or noticed in your own in your own journey.
Sure, sure. I feel like with both of them, I kind of threw myself in. When you have a child, then, overnight it literally changes. And then even, opening a business, as I didn't even go from one therapist with myself, I opened a group practice.
Hmm.
So it was really throwing myself into everything and then trying to have Rising Wellness grow. So I was taking on a lot.
Hmm.
Um, so I definitely had my own ups and downs with the growth and changes within the business in the last 4 years. So even if you look at 4 years, the 4 years you have of a child, you grow immensely
Yeah.
within that period. And even 4 years of my business, I have grown immensely with the ups and the downs of both, and learning to every stage of childhood and every stage of business development. I'm going up and down with both of them. I'm crying with both. I'm laughing with both. I'm having fun with both. But it is very parallel. And a lot of people, they do believe that their business is their other baby. So I do have 3 kids, business being one of them, and then my 2 children. But it is very similar with the amount of inner child work that has to be done, and going to my own therapy for both, and just picking which topic I want to talk about in therapy,
Hmm.
because they are both going to bring out emotions and things that I didn't know I had to work on.
Yeah.
you know Even as a therapist, I was like, I've been in therapy before, I did a pretty good job. Not until you own a business or you have kids will it actually get tapped into.
Right. Well, and that's where, you know, I have 4 kids and it's like 4 little mirrors. When I finally get something
Hmm.
figured out with one, last night my husband and I were saying like it's like whack-a-mole. We get one situated and then the other
Hmm.
one pops up. And then we get them situated, another one pops up, and then two pop up.
Hmm.
And that's how it is with business sometimes when it's like, oh, I finally figured out what this is going to be. And then something else
Hmm.
gets misaligned
Yep.
or doesn't work as it was, or somebody decides that they're no longer going to continue to work with you, or, summer
Hmm.
comes. And so clients are a little bit less consistent or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Yes.
so, yeah, and it's working to stay regulated through those ups and downs,
Hmm.
working to really keep our systems grounded and regulated through all of it because it can be
Hmm.
very taxing otherwise.
Yes, and I think staying regulated for some of us, I know I had some trouble that could be the most difficult part.
Oh, yeah.
Definitely of being a mom, because everything is being triggered mostly every day. And
Hmm.
with the business, it may not feel daily, but there's definitely times when you feel like you're just sailing, this is great, and
Yeah.
then something happens and it's like a crash,
Yeah. And,
right?
I was a pediatric occupational therapist. I was teaching regulation. I was helping support
Mhm.
kids in their regulation, helping families learn how to regulate. And yet I didn't understand that I was not regulated myself because as an adult woman, it looks very different than when I'm working with a child who's
Right,
dysregulated. I wasn't running
right.
around and jumping on the couches, but I
Hmm.
was crying and yelling and overwhelmed and
Hmm.
shutting down and taking naps and all of the other
Hmm.
unhealthy things because I wasn't doing them from a place of taking care of like I wasn't taking a nap because I was
Right,
like, oh, this is going to feel good. I was taking a nap because I had nothing left to give and it was my shutdown. And
right.
learning that, oh, what you teach is what you need the most. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that's nice. But so learning how to regulate myself, it was hard because I
Mm-hmm.
was not taught that. I was taught,
Mm-mm.
as many of us are, you just keep going. You deal with it.
Yes.
It just
Yes.
that this is the way it is. And so
Mm-hmm.
keep moving forward, go fix it, go do better, right? Like that's where that
Right.
do better. Oh, I should
Mm-hmm.
have done better. Now the shame and the guilt gets piled in on top of that overwhelm,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and I'm asleep.
Yeah. Right. Right. So
I'm
that
laughing
regulation,
because, right, like
you
that
got
was
through
for
it.
so
Yeah.
long that really was my reality of motherhood was I was
Mm-hmm.
overwhelmed and exhausted. And to
Mm-hmm.
have to figure out how to take care of myself and how to regulate myself so that I
Mm-hmm.
was not always exhausted, as you said, like I didn't have that support.
Mm-mm. No. And we have to learn that we need to find our village, to be cliche. We have to have our village and whoever that is, because if we don't have that support, we're not going to find the time to take care of ourselves. And that people pleasing and that perfectionism that really is in most of us, because that's how we're brought up.
Yeah.
Some of us have it a little bit more than others, but those attributes, being type A and being like, I could always do everything and fly through and it was great. Well, owning a business and being a mother, they're gonna rock you to the core because you've never done this before.
And that's
So,
their jobs, right? Their job
yeah.
is to push and test the boundaries. And our job is to hold those
Mhm.
boundaries. And it's hard to hold those boundaries. It
Very
feels
hard to hold
easy to
those
test the
boundaries.
boundaries. Just yell and scream and push and ask again
Right.
300 more times until you get what you want.
Hmm.
But
Yes.
as the parent,
Right.
that means you've got to listen to it 300 times and you still have to say no and you still have to listen to it
Hmm.
or find a different way to
Hmm.
respond to it. But yeah,
Right.
finding the support, finding the community was so integral for me. And my
Hmm.
community started,
Hmm.
like you had said, like with one person, with my therapist. And then my sister, I
Hmm.
really leaned on her because she would answer the phone every time I called. And
Hmm.
she could listen and hold space.
Right.
And that
Right.
was
And
what I
that's the
needed.
key.
Yeah.
Yes, you have to find that village that can hold the space. If you're giving to your village and you're not either able to receive or they're not able to give you what you need, then it's not the right village. And
Yeah.
that can be very, very difficult, especially with our families of origin. We're like, why are they not able to give me what I need?
Yeah.
They probably were never able to give you what you need. That's a whole other session, but
Yeah.
it's being able to go and find the moms groups, find, even, using social media to find the other women who are also looking for
Yeah.
that. And these days, all I see is in the Facebook groups, I need friends, I need friends. Where's a village? I'm being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Everyone is looking for that connection and to know I'm not alone in this
Right.
because usually, their friends maybe aren't in the same stage of life, their partners don't quite get it, there are other, family members that are like, suck it up, I did it, you can do it,
Right.
you just have to do better,
Right.
right? All those
Yeah.
messages.
Yes.
But being able to find the people out there, and I promise everybody that they're out there doing the same thing in the same stage of life, you're going to find people be very supportive
Yeah.
and to hold you and give you that space.
Yeah. And so as I would love to talk about this really about how do you how do you start to find that support? Obviously, we can call a therapist and you've got to navigate the pieces of insurance. Is it private? How do you find someone? So if I'm a new mom, if I'm a mom really having a hard time, how do I find a therapist? Let's start here, who maybe works with moms.
Mm-hmm. There's many places. Right now, I'm definitely seeing since COVID a great trend of people going to women Facebook pages and saying, I need a therapist. Who do you recommend? You will get a ton of responses.
Mhm.
Um, but for moms, there's also postpartum.net, which is Postpartum Support International. They have a directory of specified, trained, certified therapists that work with moms. We've all had specialized training with this population. There's also in our area Perinatal Partners Network.com, and they have a directory of all the specialties that work with women and moms, not just therapists, but there's a directory. They've all been vetted. A lot of us have met each other. And so
Yeah, and sometimes
we
just
have the
looking at the
training.
resources that are available because you don't know what you don't know. You don't know
Hmm.
what's out there until, or sometimes you don't even know what to look for. And so I love, and I'll put
Hmm.
these in the show notes, these two resources, because even just going through the list, sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't even know that was something, but I need that. Like I didn't
Hmm.
know that there was
Hmm.
a breastfeeding resource center
Hmm.
until I had my second baby. But
Right.
I really struggled with my first one with breastfeeding and just had
Hmm.
to figure it out. Um,
Hmm.
and so I love that there's a place where people can go and learn a little bit more. In terms of the
Yes.
offerings, I know you mentioned obviously you have the therapy piece.
Hmm.
Talk a little bit more about the other resources. I know you've got something in the works, but you also have this Rising Wellness. So
Hmm.
what is that?
Sure. Rising Wellness is a collective of other providers that I bring in. They have the same mission, the same values as Rising Sun Therapy, in that we want to promote healing through alternative modalities, right? Talk therapy, we're learning it's all cognitive, it's in your head, it's not everything. So we have workshops and groups that include art therapy. That's once a month. And that one's where up to 10 women get together. We do a craft, we talk, we connect, we get to know each other, and then we can share or not. And, within that realm, there is a little bit of therapy in there. But like I said before, that creativity is it's part of us. And we're able to be seen and heard if we share, but we're able to be seen in our project by the other women.
Yeah.
And everyone is so compassionate, caring, and supportive that we don't even need to say anything, but they're going to be like, I love how you did that. That is really interesting.
I think it's also, I've experienced your art therapy workshops, and I think it's also a great way to experience like a taste of therapy without having to be super vulnerable.
Hmm.
Experience like figuring out the one that I was at, it was about asking questions of something else, but really seeing the reflection of what it brought out of ourselves. And so
Hmm.
it's a safe space to kind of share as much as you want, but just
Hmm.
use that reflection through the art that you create, whether there's a
Hmm.
prompt or something. And so
Yeah.
it's a great way to just kind of like get a taste, or as you mentioned, supplement therapy.
Hmm. Yes, I we have many women that will come and take their project then to their therapist and go deeper into it of what it brought up for them. We've also had music therapy, a lot for teens, since we do work with teens and women.
Mhm.
I have a new mom support group that I host every Thursday, where it's a casual gathering of new moms and we're getting to know each other. The kids are getting older. They're
Yeah.
now walking around and getting into things. But it's a great place to share resources, ask me any questions, and just hear, which we've heard almost every time, you're not alone.
Yeah.
I did that too, or I just needed to come to this place and just get something off
Yeah.
my
I
chest.
mean, they say the two most important words to hear are me too. Like
Mm-hmm.
just feel that validation. I know as a new
Mm-hmm.
mom, well, not even as a new mom, when I had three kids, so my oldest was about four, I had some girlfriends that I would hang out with a lot. We had kids the same age, and I would talk about this overwhelm. I would talk about what I didn't realize at the time was my anxiety and my depression. And I felt like they couldn't relate to what I was saying. And
Mm-hmm.
so it put me even more in that
Mm-hmm.
proving myself, like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
you don't relate to what I'm saying? Okay, just
Yeah.
kidding. Like, let me lighten up how I'm feeling or what I'm going through
Mm-hmm.
because you didn't relate. And so it made me even less secure, not because
Yes.
of them, but because of my own inability to really understand. And had I had someone who said me too, or even just validated what I was going through,
Mm-hmm.
would
Right.
have been, you know, you, I have the belief that like you obviously you can't go back in time and change things, but if I could go back to my younger self as a mom, I just wish I could give her so much validation as to what
Mm-hmm.
she was doing and to who she was because
Mm-hmm.
she was just so caught up in the struggle
Mm-hmm.
and so caught up in trying to do better that she couldn't even see that she was doing the best that she could. And
Right.
I just wish I could give that to every mom,
Mm-hmm.
to every new mom. When I worked with moms in my previous work, every time I did a phone call, a conversation, a consult, whatever, I always ended the conversation with, I want you to know that you're a great mom and that you're doing everything for your child. The fact that you made this phone call, whether we work together or not,
Mm-hmm.
means that you're doing an amazing job for your child because you're asking the
Yes.
questions. And
Right.
every single time it made the mom cry. Every
Mm-hmm.
single time.
Mm-hmm.
Because we don't get that feedback in a way that's validating. I would hear it from my clients that I would work with, "Oh, you must be a great mom at home." Right? And I would be like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, that's because you don't see me at home." I would just kind of say like, "Thank
Right.
you," right? Like, but in my mind, I would think, "Oh, that's because you don't see me at home."
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you can validate what that mom is doing and where she's at and what she's trying to figure out or do
Mm-hmm.
for her child, it's so significant.
Yes. Yes. Because as women, our baseline, we want to be connected. And within that, to feel connected, we need to feel seen
Yeah.
and we need to feel heard. And that's why Me Too is so important. And when people come to anything that we host, we're seeing you. We're seeing you in your creativeness in your project because they're so unique, so different. And you're getting to see each person's personality
Yeah.
within that. In the moms group, they're vulnerable right from the start because it is safe and we're seeing them and
Yeah.
we're hearing their stories, right? So, most of my clients, when I say you're doing a good job, they will cry, like you said, because no one else is telling them that. And I think that's the saddest part
Yeah.
about society sometimes, and especially social media. It doesn't say, hey, you're doing a good job. Some of the memes, not all of them, but we don't always hear that or see that. So when someone actually says, "Oh my gosh, I see you.
Yeah.
I see all of you
Right.
and I hear you and I want to hear more."
Yeah.
We open up, we're safe to do that. And really as a human species, that's what we want. We want that connection. We need that
Absolutely.
connection.
Absolutely. Yes. And I know you've got something in the works. So tell us about
Mhm.
what you've got coming up in the next couple of months.
Yes. Next week, I will co-host and record our new podcast
Very
called,
exciting.
I want to get the name right, Real Parenting for the Sensitive Mom, for moms who feel everything and still show up.
Yeah.
So, Adrian and I will be co hosting it, and we're going to be talking about coaching and therapy with the clients, but what it means to be a pilot sensitive person, highly sensitive mom, how we, show up and parent through being highly sensitive, what it means for our kids to be highly sensitive and the challenges that can bring, and how to manage that, and just showing them you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Many moms, I feel, are a lot more sensitive than we allow ourselves to, right? We allow
Let me just raise
ourselves
my
to
hand on that one.
acknowledge,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
And again, like I taught it and like as an OT, I knew I was more sensitive, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand how much that was impacting me. And so I am so excited for what you guys are bringing out because it's so important. I know that the conversations that are going to come between you and Adrian are going to be so impactful for so many moms. And I hope that there's just one mom who is feeling the way that I was that can benefit from it because
Mm-hmm.
it's so isolating, it's so overwhelming, and hearing somebody talk about it in a way that you can understand and relate to, but then move through or understand
Mm-hmm.
so that you can start to do it differently.
Mm-hmm.
Like I never would have called myself highly sensitive. And now
Mm-mm.
I'm like, huh, that's funny because I am very sensitive
Yes.
to just,
Yeah.
I say silly little things, but they're not silly little things to me. They're big things to me that
Mm-hmm.
impact my ability to show up. And now I've learned to
Right.
adapt and regulate myself. And
Mm-hmm.
I now use the strategies that I taught, you know, all the things. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's so important. And so, do you know when the date is that you'll have your first episode out so that people can find that?
We're shooting for September
Okay.
and we're going to record at least three over the summer so we can get the first three out. I know the first one's definitely going to be education about a highly sensitive mom, what that looks like,
Mhm.
sounds like.
Yeah.
So each episode's going to have some education, conversation between Adrian and I, and tidbits and takeaways because that is really important.
Yeah.
Things to actually do to support yourself, to support your kids, to help regulate yourself and just have that understanding of, I'm really okay. I can work with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And because the more we learn about it, the more we understand it, the more we can work with it
Mhm.
versus feeling like it's impacting us as much
Right.
and overtaking our lives.
Right. And no, it's not, there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm-mm.
It's just how you're wired, how you came to be,
Yeah.
right? So once you can learn to work with yourself, take away the shame, take away stigma, and just, maybe practice a few other things and
Love that.
feel more competent as a parent too.
Well, I could talk to you about this all day long, obviously, but I do want to make sure that if somebody wants to be able to find you, where can they find you and where maybe like will the podcast show up on your website
Mhm.
or in your social media that they can find that later as well? And we'll link it all in the show notes too, but
Mhm. Yes. So podcast, everything will be on my website, which is risingsuntherapy.com. Podcast will be hopefully out in other areas. I'll definitely have it on my social media, which will be facebook.com Rising Sun Therapy and instagram.com/ Leah Andreoni. It'll be all over that. It'll be all over Adrian's social and website also. So there'll definitely be ways to get a hold of it and listen
yeah,
and
and
then follow.
that's Adrian Bishop or Adrian Bishop Coaching, just
Yes.
somebody searching for that too. But we'll put all those links in the show notes. Anything that you want to tell our audience before we go, or any last thoughts that you might have for today?
I don't think so. I think the bottom line for Rising Sun and me is just really connecting with others and connecting with yourself
Yeah,
is the best way to really feel fulfilled and, regulate yourself. and feel like you're doing a really good job.
Yeah, because you are. We're
You
all
are.
doing the best
Hmm.
that we can and recognizing that it is the best that we can. Love
That's
that.
it.
Well, thank you so
Mm,
much, Leah. I greatly
thank you.
appreciate your time and you joining us today at Tea Time. And join us next time for our next conversation with Tea Time with Teacup Entrepreneurs right here. You can like and subscribe and leave a comment and let us know about your motherhood journey or your entrepreneur journey and share a little bit with us. Bye.